Oh, I didn't know I was muted. Let's try again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from and listening to us from. My name is Wendy. I am your host for today, for this month's webinar, and I'm very excited for the conversation you're going to be having today because we have such an amazing panel of titans who have built amazing businesses and been the wind beneath the wings of these businesses to help them flourish. And you're going to learn from the best. I believe and I know these guys are the best, and you get front row seats to this discussion today. So we have an amazing panel, and I'm seeing guys are streaming in. So I'm very excited. So I want us to use the chat box, and please let us know where are you listening to us from, and what are you looking forward to learning during this session. This is just going to be 1 hour, 30 minutes. So I really want you to capitalize on having this amazing people here. So I want to know, where are you listening to us from, and what are you looking forward to learning as the session continues. As I mentioned, my name is Wendy. I am the community officer at Sandbox, and at Sandbox we support entrepreneurs and we help them thrive through a number of ways, from professional services through our amazing experts here at the Sandbox, trainings, programs, and so much more. We are located at CMS Africa House along Chania Avenue, and we are very ready to support you as an entrepreneur who has, even if it is an idea, again, even the idea is very much welcome here. So we're very excited to be having you. I will proceed to just introduce my panelists for the day, because again, this is a very rich panel. And I'll start with our number one panelist, who is Chiki. Chiki is a global Afrobeat, soca, and dance fitness guru and a choreographer and a wellness advocate based in Kenya. I really want to know maybe how to dance soca. I don't even know how that is done. So I'm sure she'll tell us how. She is the founder of a fusion and has revolutionized the fitness scene by blending Afrobeat rhythms and high energy workouts, making fitness and fun accessible. She also runs Dance Shots, a vibrant studio where she nurtures dancers and fitness enthusiasts alike. She is and the manager of a renowned Kenyan musician, BN, guiding his career and contributing to his success of his artistic journey. Again, I just told you guys, we have the best of the best today is seated with us here today. So karibu sana Chiki, we're very excited to be having you here today.
Happy to be here, super excited about what I know is a very rich conversation.
Thank you so much. I want to go to our next panelist, who is Benjamin Luther. He has a very interesting bio, actually, and I'll just say it as it is. According to Benjamin, he believes that every business has a unique DNA, a magical formula that, when unlocked, can unleash its full potential. With over 18 years of experience in strategy and market communication, he blends expertise with his creative art skills by bringing ideas to life in compelling ways. He is a founder of Fused, a boutique brand and design agency in Kenya. He's dedicated his career to helping brands discover their essence and leverage their strengths. Again, I'm here for he believes that everyone has something in them that, as a brand, you have it. Just like to help you unlock it. So karibu sana Luther.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
My next panelist is Naomi. Naomi is a seasoned sales, marketing, and commercial operations leader with 17 years of experience in the highly regulated healthcare industry. She has successfully led market growth strategies across sub-Saharan Africa, driving transformations and commercial success. Beyond corporate leadership, Naomi is the founder of Treasured Scents, a thriving fragrance business that began as a social media-driven brand, the power of social media, and has since expanded into a brick and mortar presence at Greenhouse Ngong Road in Nairobi and serving the East African region with a focus on authentic, verifiable products. I love that there's a lot of authenticity in the brands that our panelists have and what they're pouring into the brands they are building. So I really love that. And I really can't wait to hear from Naomi as well. Karibu sana, Naomi.
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Looking forward.
And lastly, my last panelist is a man behind a very big brand, and he'll tell us a little later into the conversation. But Paul Karingithi is the strategy director and co-founder of Brandspark PR, a communications advisory agency based in Kenya, with over 15 years of experience in advertising and marketing communication. Paul has been instrumental in crafting innovative strategies that enhance brand visibility and engagement. Again, he's going to laugh about that. When he's not busy at work, Paul enjoys driving everywhere, traveling everywhere and driving. And golf, of course. There's no one I know in this Nairobi who doesn't play golf. So Paul is one of them. And he will play the golf anywhere. So I think that's his brand. He can do anything anywhere. Even that strategy that you're asking him for, he'll do it anywhere. So karibu sana, Paul.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I really love that introduction. I wondered if
okay, so I'm going to jump right into the meat of things because we don't have that much time. We have 1 hour, 30 minutes. So as we continue, I think I want to ask our attendees in the chat, let's go back to the basics of what a brand is. Like, what is a brand? And you can tell us in the chat, in your opinion, first of all, do you think your business has a brand? Because it's one thing to have a business, it's another thing to have a business that has a brand. So we'll ask you guys in the chat, please let us know, do you think your business has a brand? And I want to pose it directly to our brand expert of the call, which is Luther. Exactly, what is a brand?
Okay, so the street definition, the one that everybody will remember, is a brand. It's a short code. It's a short code from a consumer's perspective. It's a short code that helps you navigate the world. So it helps you stay sane, helps you save on money, and helps you save on time. So that's the definition of a brand in street language.
In street language. So just to maybe pick something else from someone else, I want to ask Naomi, from you who has built a business, what is a brand to you?
Fantastic question. For me, it's if someone was to ask how customers or people outside describe your business in 1 word or 2 words, what stands out in terms of your business? I think that's what your brand is really about. So for me, it's about trust and authenticity. That's the brand that I have built as Treasured Sense. So I'd say it's the art of building trust, and connecting with customers in a way that they, when they think of something, if they're to describe it in 1 or 2 words, then I think that's how I describe a brand.
Okay, I love that. First of all, it's trust, it's authenticity, and it's a shortcut. Those 3 things are like, when they say, what's the secret? It's trust, it's authenticity, and it's a shortcut. And those 2 things tie together. And there are different aspects of brand. So I know we know the big brands. Like, what is it that makes an ordinary brand or a service? Like, what makes it stick? So I know we have the big brands like Colgate. When you think of toothpaste, you think Colgate. If someone asks, even if you don't use Colgate, you'll say, do you have Colgate in your house? They don't use Colgate, they use Pepsodent, but you'll say Colgate. Have you had coffee? When you think coffee, you think of Java. When you think music, when you think phones, you think iPhone. What is it that makes a brand stick? And I want to maybe ask Chiki, like, what is it that makes that brand stick? What is it that makes it so impressionable? What is it that makes it so memorable for the consumer?
I'd first like to challenge whether or not a brand.
Chiki, we can't see you. I think you're halfway through. Your screen is half.
Oh, on my screen it's full. Can you see me now?
Yes.
I think I first want to challenge whether or not a brand always has to be authentic. I think some people have built brands off the concept of being inauthentic. When I say that, I think of some rappers. There are some brands who their entire thing is, this isn't really necessarily how I live, but this is the brand that I'm putting forward. Especially when we know personal life versus public life. So what I would say is a brand that sticks is a brand that's consistent. Keep doing the same thing. If you're someone who always is flashy, I'm talking about people who have personal brands, always be flashy. If you're someone who leads with personal values, what you wouldn't want to see is I stand for animals and then I'm kicking a cat. You know, it has to be consistency, consistency, consistency. And when you know exactly what that brand narrative is, never deviating from it. I think those are brands.
Okay. Okay, I like that you brought in the aspect of the personal brand. And we've seen people build businesses from personal brands. So I think we've seen a lot of the influencer culture whereby someone is a big time influencer and then they said, I think it's time for me to now have my own business. Like, for example, how to differentiate the two just to make sure that everyone has an independent brand. Like you as Chiki, you have an independent brand and your business is separate. That if a Chiki decides mess up, it doesn't affect the brand and vice versa. How do we separate the two? And when is it time to bring both of them together as well?
I'm not sure if you can ever really 100% separate the two. So I think there is meeting points in the middle where you say, okay, this is what as a personal brand I keep for myself, and this is what as a public brand I have for my business. So I'll give you an example. If we think of Calligraph Jones, for example, Calligraph Jones, if you follow his page, his personal page on social media, he has his children. Sometimes you see his partner. Of course, his house / mansion went absolutely viral. And then you see his public brand. His public brand is very hardened. He reps coming from the hood that he comes from. His lyrics are very hard-hitting. And that, in some respects, seems like two completely different personalities. Where they meet in the middle is the kind of the authenticity, the boldness. So I'm not sure if you can ever, especially if both are public, you can ever really kind of remove one from the other. I just think that you must be very, very clear in terms of what your boundaries are for each. So you will never ever see, for example, a Calligraph Jones rap about his kids. That's not what his public brand is. However, you can expect that on his social media. And then it comes back then down to consistency. Do I see that regularly enough on your social media for me to know that that's your personal brand? Do you represent something radically different on stage enough for me to know that that's what your public brand is? And then I can form a relationship with the two that are distinct.
Okay, I like that. So boundaries are a very big thing. Like as well as someone who has a personal brand and a business brand, boundaries, like it should be written in caps and on a billboard, have boundaries. More than anything, it's boundaries. So I think I want to just jump back to Luther. When we're building brands, like what are the basics like for your brand? If I come to you and I'm a business owner and I'm like, okay, fine, now I want to say that I need to build my brand. So a lot of people think that a brand is a logo or a brand is the colors. Like, what are the basics 101 as a brand strategist that you tell entrepreneurs this is where you need to start for your brand or to build the brand?
I'm assuming that's for me.
Yes.
All right. So I think I'll write on what Chiki said. So one of the things is being consistent. When you're consistent, you enjoy trust. Though maybe I should just throw something that brands are neutral. They're neither, they're not always positive or negative. Like brands are neutral. It's actually at the mercy of the people that experience you to judge as to whether you're a good thing or a bad thing. So you can be consistent, like the traffic police, consistent in a particular manner, so that when somebody sees you, you enjoy the opposite of trust. So you enjoy mistrust. Like if you constantly get late every day, you build a reputation around that. Then when you tell somebody I'll be there at 9, they will not trust you. So consistency is one. So when you're consistent, you enjoy trust. When you work on your awareness, you become the most familiar thing. So that if I drop you in a new country and I tell you to go look for shoe polish, the most familiar brand in your mind is Kiwi. Yeah, so you work on your awareness, you enjoy familiarity. Familiarity is what will cause somebody to choose you over another person because you're the most familiar thing. The third thing is differentiation. I'm going to touch on it a little later. But when you differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd, then people favor you over other people. So that's pillar number 3. Differentiation, you enjoy favorability. Then number 4, if you work on your reputation, you enjoy value. So you become like an aspirational brand. People want to come and see you, or when they pay for what you're offering, they feel that they've received value. So the example I normally give is if the brand Toyota, when I tell somebody I've spent like 20 million on a Toyota, they want explanations as to why I spent that kind of money. But if I spend 20 million on say Range Rover, nobody questions it. So there's a reputation that they've worked on that allows them to enjoy a sense of value. When I said I'll go back to differentiation, or awareness when you're setting out. So this is now where maybe you would need an expert to come in. You have an opportunity of going to the market as scary. So the people whom this scariness about them is what helps them be known. And the people who go into the market as being strange, and the strangeness is what makes people remember you. Some go into the market as being sexy. Some go into the market and offer you something for free. That's why you remember them. And then there are people whom they're just sweet and nice. So you have to kind of find your own cocktail mix as you're going into the market, or as you're building your reputation in a market. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of things that require a professional. Let's start there. A lot of these things require a professional. So from consistency, it means that you're regularly on social media talking about your business and all the things. Reputation, it means that you're constantly putting yourself out there, managing your reputation, keeping it on the positive. So I'm hearing these things that you're saying require a professional. And I'm going to jump right over to Bugs, who is the said professional. And how do you build trust, Bugs, especially in a market that is saturated? Unlike Naomi, who is, first of all, works in a market that is heavily regulated. But even in that situation, how do you build trust for your brand? And where does it come into that?
I think I like what Luther has said: the consistency, the awareness, the differentiation, and building the reputation that you attain value. And I think I always, to build trust, first of all, you have to be consistent. If you're in the market one day and then you get off the market, then you come back, people don't know what you stand for. You don't know what this brand stands for. And so you lose people. So people go and they want consistent brands. And that's the reason why big brands have been here for a very long time. Because they are consistent. When Luther talks about Kiwi, it's because we've seen Kiwi from we were young. The brand is the same. It's gone through different iterations of being owned by different companies. The brand is the same to me. The Kiwi I bought when I was a kid is the same Kiwi now, and it will be the same shoes. And we see that across different brands. And one of that is consistency. We live in a very interesting market because things that change on a daily basis. There are brands that go do different things. I mean, you might have, you're selling, I would say, maize flour, and then at some point there's an issue about that maize flour. But the point of it is the consistency. How do you deal with that crisis and come and reassure the market that your maize flour is still as good, and you've taken steps to make sure it's good? I think the second thing is awareness. People don't keep talking about the brand. And I like the what Chiki was talking about Calligraph. The reason why we know Calligraph is also because he puts himself out there. He's consistent, but he's also makes sure that we see what he does. So even with the beefs and the tweets, the new songs, the new collaborations, he's out there creating his brand and growing it. And we see that a lot with brands who are extremely good, but there's no awareness in the market. So nobody knows that your brand is good or what your brand stands for. We never take the chance on your brand. I will never decide I love brand. Let me take an opportunity to use it and then share that this brand is good. And then and because I'm the PR expert at the Sandbox, we usually say, you know, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And so you will find somebody else telling a story of their brand that might not be as good as yours just because you're not telling your story. So it's up to every brand and every person, personal brand, or you have a brand in the market, you need to tell the story of that brand. And that can be told on many different platforms, digital, social, mass media, you know, above the line. So all those are places to tell your story. I leave Luther to bring in the element of differentiation. But one of the things that happens with awareness is also you build a reputation. And that reputation over time gives you what you are saying, value. And we do have cases of brands that have built that reputation. That reputation has been eroded, but they're still coming back into the market to build that reputation back. And how do you build that reputation back even when you're attached to a different reputation? One of the examples I could give a client that we worked with is actually Mahindra in this market. Anyone who remembers the old Mahindra, when they were being used by the cops, had a very bad reputation. And now currently they are on a journey to actually rebuild that reputation. But the brand, the product is good, but it's the market they came into and what happened in this market. And you have to take the steps back and say, how do I rebuild this brand so that then I'm able to create a good reputation?
Wendy?
There's something, Bugs, you have said about building and, like, you know, the different avenues you use to build as you. Oh, yes, Chiki.
I wanted to just add on to something, because I think when speaking about awareness, it can feel a bit overwhelming to people. And I think where a lot of people first think is cost. Awareness doesn't just have to be necessarily you telling your story. It can be people telling your story for you in a way that you've wanted them to tell your story for you. So I'll give you another example. If you look at The Weeknd is very, very rarely on social media. He's not actually very, very loud. None of the awareness of The Weeknd comes from The Weeknd himself. However, what his team has done very smartly is, and that then is part of his brand. His brand is, I'm away from the public eye, and that's part of now the consistency. Nyashinsky is another very good example. When people think of Nyash, they think of the GOAT, they think of a great penman, and they kind of like counteract those things with consistent quality. I think Luta mentioned quality beforehand, so that there's trust, and their aloofness is actually part of their brand. So if part of your brand is to not be very loud, then there is still an opportunity, sorry, my dogs, for someone to tell your story for you.
Okay, I love that there's different ways of awareness that both of you have mentioned, whereby someone else is telling your story for you, or it's you doing the heavy lifting of actually telling your own story. So I want to just jump to Naomi, and there's something Bugs mentioned about using different platforms to actually create that awareness. And as a business owner, as a small business owner, as an SME, budgets can be tight sometimes. Like, you know, you're counting even the cents that I need this money. Like, I need this money to do this. Is it to pay rent? Is it to brand my business? Is it to what? Like, where is the money going? So where did you start as a founder? Like, where did you start in shaping your brand? Because I think in your bio it says that you guys were primarily online before you actually had a physical store. So where did you start?
Great. So I'll start from the very beginning before I get to the question around marketing budgets. So for me, the starting point was purpose. And I know purpose is that word that comes about. It can be very ambiguous. It can be very abstract. But for us, it was me discovering that there was a real tangible problem. And the real tangible problem was that people just couldn't access authentic, trusted fragrance in the market. Most people were stocking up either when they traveled or they'd send someone who was traveling so that they get, the real authentic stuff. So for me, I thought that was a need. I myself, as a consumer, either would find a way of sending, shopping, etc., just figure that out. Now, with that in mind, the easiest way to start, so I actually started selling in my cupboard, started selling to my friends, and that sort of established that there was a need. So the easiest thing to do, because I was still in corporate, was to start a social media page. But that comes with a problem. We've said there's a lack of confidence in terms of local sources. Then there's a fact that how are you selling fragrance online as well? So a big part of why I say our brand was about trust was the fact that we needed to sell the fact that we can be your nose and be able to walk you through fragrances. And we developed a skill between me and the one staff that I currently started with. But also in terms of just being a trusted source locally, the kind of return policies that we implemented were primarily in the favor of the client. Saying that, look, if you are not confident that that is the right thing when you receive it, the rider will wait, just send it back. We'll actually even not ask you for the finances first, don't pay for it. So our return policies were very much in favor of the client, trying to build that trust. We also educated our audience in terms of how do you verify that this is actually the real product. And within time, we started getting referrals, we started getting featured mentions, which is a reputation Luther was talking about earlier. Now, the other gap that we sort of identified was around complete product experiences. So I sell Bath and Body Works, very basic thing that you can find anywhere, but most people will want a mist, a cream, but the kind of clients that we started saving, they said, no, we want scented candles, we want hand soaps, we want all these things in that particular scent that they loved. So we identified that also as a pain point, which then offered us another opportunity to differentiate, like Luther talked about. So with that, what we did is we identified who are the audiences who are feeling this pain. And then which, in terms of the different audiences, when they think about women and all those things, there are many people who are experiencing that, but who are willing to pay for the solution that we wanted to offer. Then that aligned. So our messaging, our channels, a lot of that thing aligned in terms of that regard. Now, having identified the audience in mind, the question becomes, where are they? Which channels are they using from a social media perspective? So we actually developed a persona, a corporate person, they're earning this much, etc., etc. So which platform are they likely to be? Is it Twitter, currently known as X, or is it Instagram? Is it what? Let me tell you, once you've identified your audience and their specific needs, then solving for their problem becomes, that game really changes. So even if your budget is tight, because then now you can just be only where your audience is, not necessarily trying to do billboards, trying to do all these things, but just having identified where is your audience. So you then become very strategic in terms of how you segment, how you target, the conversations that you have, the people who can speak on your behalf. So for example, us guys target women who love self-care. A lot of those are on Instagram. And we looked at, we used a lot of influencers, but we're very specific about the influencers we use. That way, whatever budget that you have, you're not hitting everywhere. And that's where the wasting sometimes comes. But you're being very specific because you understand your audience, you understand what they like to hear, and therefore you can procure the audience from an influencer who speaks to them in their language, and therefore your chances of success. So as an SME, you have to really be creative. I mean, there are things like, cross promotion, WhatsApp groups, or even just a good referral system. But you must spend. I must agree with Chiki, who at the very beginning told us consistency. Again, from a social media perspective, it's not about posting 10 times a day. It's about consistency. You post, even if you say it's twice a week, but you're posting and you're consistently posting that twice a week in a way that is valuable to the audience, in the way that it is clear, and that sort of builds awareness and trust over time. And then it's not about how much you spend, it's really about how clearly you've understood your audience and how creatively you can show up. That's what I'd say.
Okay, I feel like first of all, this is a class. Like this should have been a class because I'm listening. I'm just thinking, oh my God, I've seen so many people do so many things wrong. Or when someone comes to ask, why is it not working? Are you consistent in posting? You'll post today, you'll post tomorrow, you forget. Oh, I didn't post, I forget 2 weeks, and then you keep asking yourself, why isn't my brand not growing? So I'm hearing and I'm hearing all these positive things that we've done for the businesses that we have, and even the ones we have built through like now Bags and Luta. But now I think maybe something I'd like maybe all of you to actually mention, what is something you've done that didn't work and you were like, absolutely, we're not doing this again. Like, especially in reading the basics 101, like when you are building the brand, what is something you said, I will never do that again? I wish I didn't even think of that idea for us to start with. And I think we'll start with Chigi, we'll go around.
Sorry, I put my mic on mute because my dogs were barking. I can give you a really good example. So when it goes back to something that was said earlier of rebranding. So of course, Sauti Sol have been a loved household name for 20 years. To brand BN as an individual entity, when even just walking down the road, people tend to refer to him as Sauti Sol, was we knew already was going to be a challenge. The first project that he did was an EP. That EP was done with Aaron Rimbui. Now, that EP was done on a purely like musical basis. And it was because Bien wanted the Sonics, and Aaron and him have been working together for a very long time. However, that EP was a jazz EP. That was a very incorrect decision to make. It was great. We got Bwembwe out of the project, and we were able to really kind of craft this bold man narrative. However, Bien is a pop star, a pop artist. And the first thing that we did that when we came out of the gate was come out with a jazz EP, as opposed to doubling down on who is Bien outside of Sauti Sol. Yes, the bold man narrative has been very helpful and important to us, and has kind of pre-existed, continues to exist. But sonically, what does that look like? And it goes then back to consistency. If your first project sounds like X and then your second project sounds like Y, in terms of trust and reputation, even if both are good, when people think of trust, often it's kind of the quality can actually be it does really if I had the chance to rewind and do it again, I would have said, no, we're not going to come out, first of all, with this EP, because it meant that when we then brought out his album, Alusawa You Topless, we had to do twice as much work to really kind of drive down the narrative that this is a pop project as opposed to what the project was before. And then you're having to redevelop trust and recreate a relationship with your new audience, which could have been different. So I think I agree with what was said prior. Who is your audience? Understanding where they sit, and how do you create a product that sits with them, and it's a product that you want to create, and being consistent in that, rather than creating a product that you like, that sits with you, that doesn't necessarily resonate with the audience that you want to build long term, and pushing that and then pushing something else. That wasn't good.
Okay. I want to jump to, on my screen, I can see Paul. So what's something you did with a client or a brand, you're like, you know what, that was the first mistake. We shouldn't have done it. We're never doing it again.
So mine comes from back in the day when I was a copywriter, the first job, and we used to handle Peugeot, or the dealer here was called Marshalls. And at that time, the international company, Peugeot, internationally based in France, we were going to discontinue the 504. Now, if anyone knows what the 504 was or what the 504 meant, in a Kenyan context, it was what Toyota Hilux or Toyota Corolla has become these days, or in the earlier years. And so it was the car that everyone had. And so when they made that decision to discontinue that car, we were against that decision, but they then gave us a replacement. Hello? Oh.
Yeah, can hear you.
So they gave us a replacement that was a Peugeot partner, which was the difference between those two. And we tried our best to sell the new car in this market, and it just didn't work. And everyone who owned a Peugeot 504, and especially the people who owned the Peugeot 504 pickups, all changed and trooped away, and that became the rise of the Toyota Hilux. And so I look back on that and say that was a thing they shouldn't have done, and we shouldn't have helped them try to do in this particular market.
Naomi?
I have a very recent one. Our audience is largely women. I'd say 85% of our audience is women, which is great because that's the kind of product that we sell. However, during occasions such as Valentine's, we need to find men who can then buy for their women the product. Of course, we can promote self-love and etc. So my biggest challenge actually over the years is where do I find men to buy Valentine's gifts from us? So I remember last year we said, where are men? Where are men? Men in terms of social media, largely, I mean, they're everywhere, yes. If you look at statistics, even Instagram, it says that the highest percentage, but in terms of consumption, engagement, and all those things, it's not very strong. So we tried Twitter. That didn't work. So this year we tried, we said, I spoke to a friend and he said, look, I play golf like Paul here at Motega Golf Club. Why not come and do an activation at Motega Golf Club? And yeah, that makes sense. Men are there. If they're playing golf, they're likely to have disposable income, etc. And we went and we did a lovely activation and all that. But I think for the efforts that we had to put was not necessarily commensurate to the business that we got. We got business, but it was just not commensurate. First of all, I did try and sort of recce and try and understand the profile, but the reality was a lot of the profile in Motega is old money. Old, nice old men. So from a profile perspective, that might not have, the idea might have been great going to a golf club, but the particular golf club that we chose. So in terms of just me saying, understanding your audience and where they are at, and just reinforcing that point. That was one of the things that I feel like, okay, we try to go back there. Yeah.
Luther?
I have two. I'll be quick on it. One was just the foolishness of mixing personal and professional brands. So that like my posts, and I see that I see people and I'm like, don't mix those two. So I would consistently post on social media, I think on Mondays, like just deep stuff that I'm thinking about, and I built a whole following around it. Mambo Paribika personal. Where? So I journeyed through a season and I just couldn't get myself up to post anymore. So I ended up losing that consistency of just, being able to show authenticity and everything, because the season I was going through was tough. And I couldn't put my life out there now because it was not rosy anymore. So I think that for me was a mistake. And I think I heard what Chiki said earlier, like find a balance and let your life be yours. Yeah, so just find a good balance in there. The second one was, I think when I'm working with clients, they would imagine I can do anything and everything. And so one time we worked on a campaign for climate change, and it was good. Like we did the concepts, we did everything. It worked out okay. So they asked me, can you do for us merchandise? I said yes. Did a markup, made some money from it. And I showed up there with honorable people, ambassadors from different countries when the thing was being launched, and all of them are wearing these beautiful t-shirts for the campaign against climate change. Then it started raining. Let me just tell you, I saw those t-shirts, the ink started dripping like while I was there. And it's because printing and production is not my space. And I had done, I think, 700 t-shirts. So I could just look around and see disaster happening all around me. Yeah, so I shy away from doing production. My brain works well, so I stick to strategy and I'll stick to design. Production has their people. Yeah, but yeah, my reputation iliungua, no joke. Yeah.
I'm sure it's been a struggle building back that reputation. It has been a struggle, and I know
Yeah.
you do well, so I have faith. So we have a few questions in the comments, and I'm going to pick this one from Priska and one from Frida and Lorraine. And Frida says, hello, I'm Frida from Tendasoko, and I'm glad to be here. I have a question about social media. Posting isn't the issue, but you need to have engagement on how one can make consumers blend in with the content that you post. But over time, I think we've seen consumers change and the consumer behaviors of your audience change. I think, how do you navigate that? How do you amend your content to fit, like as you're posting on social media, to fit the audience? Like, let's say I'm Naomi's customer and I used to just follow her when she was just posting, and now Wendy has money. How do I amend that content to appeal to Wendy to convert, in terms of, I've been posting in consistently, but how do you make sure the consumer relates to that content and even blends and turns into a purchase? So I want to hand that over to Naomi.
Thanks, Wendy. Fantastic question. Two things from my end. Fantastic if posting is not an issue, that you're being consistent. I think that the thing I will challenge and my fellow panelists will contribute is how important engagement is if you're trading. So let me give an example. So my page has 53,000 followers. If you look at a lot of our content, you'll find like if it's just a product post or a reel, I mean, max will have likes will be maybe like 50. And that can be fairly discouraging, but you haven't seen our DMs on the other hand. What I've come to accept and understand, because I am very much the profile of person that I target, is that we don't necessarily engage. We don't necessarily take the time to like. We don't. In fact, it's the 18 to 24s who take the time to like, to comment, do all those things. But those are not necessarily my clients. The engagement that I would want is people coming to the DMs, is people coming to WhatsApp, it's people coming to inquire about the product and to purchase. It's that said, there's content that over time we have realized do better than others. So reels definitely do much better than, of course, static posts, number one. And then I'd phrase your question a little bit different to where you said, how do I make consumers blend in with the content? I'd say, how do you create content that then blends in with your consumers? So how well do you understand your consumers to therefore create the content that will blend in? The conversation around personal and corporate branding. So because I was in corporate for a very long time, I just stepped out, I steered very clear of having my personal brand within the page and all those things. But what over time now that I've transitioned to entrepreneurship is the content where I am in does very well, because people sort of want to be able to find relatability, some of those aspects. So it's just really examining what is working currently in your page, in the mini posts and in your consistency, what's working, number one. But number two, check and see how well do you understand your consumers. Then for you, the challenge is for you to create content that they can blend with, not the other way around. And number three for me is what kind of engagement is really critical for you. Is it the likes? Is it the what? I never give my social media manager hard time that likes or comments, or for me, it's at the end of the day, really it's about the feedback that we get and the sales and the engagement and the awareness that people are getting towards a different person. Sorry, you're not giving a long answer.
Okay, hey, I'm feeling like maybe we've been doing this thing all wrong, and I don't know if everyone in the in the webinar is feeling the same. But I'm feeling like we might need a refresher on how do you build a brand as you as an individual, and how does it tie to your business? That's a separate discussion. But I want to pick another question before we continue, and this is from Lorraine from Parapet, and she says, I'd like to know, while consistency is key and the main catalyst to building trust, how do you then approach a scenario where a loved brand is looking to pivot into a new space and still remain a brand that sticks, especially in the service industry? And I want to maybe give this to Luther and Paul, who actually work with the brands on the other side of things. So Luther, then Paul.
All right. So this feels more of a business strategy question more than brand. Because there will be questions around like why are you pivoting, and are you pivoting into, are you selling your new product or whatever you're pivoting into? Are you selling the new product to your old market, or are you creating an entirely new market? And then is a thing that you're pivoting into have any association with what you're doing, or it's entirely different? Because if it has an association, then what you do is you leverage on heritage and you leverage on brand equity. That's a goodwill that you have with the people. I'm hoping I'm not using very big words, to be able to build trust with a new set of clients. I know you mentioned service, but maybe the thing that's coming to my mind quickly is how Colgate end up selling you Colgate Herbal. So they sense that you're becoming more health conscious and everything and all that. And so now they introduce, and the reason why you will trust the Herbal is because it has a name Colgate associated to it. So there's a move of just understanding. It's a bit too loaded for me to unpack it, but there are several parameters that are at play when you're doing a brand extension or getting into a new market, or you're selling something new to an existing market, or it's your old product like Naomi's and you're trying to extend it to the men. Like why are you doing that? Yeah, so yeah, it's a little loaded. Maybe Paul can chip in.
I agree with you, Luther, because those are the questions to ask. Is it you're selling a new product to the same market? Are you moving to a completely different market who don't even know you exist, have never experienced your previous product? So you have to start again from the very beginning. Unfortunately, in my mind, I don't have an example of a service. I'm thinking of if I have a client who sells trucks and they start selling trailers, that becomes easier. It's an extension. Rather than if they were selling trucks and now they want to sell small electrical cars. Those things are very different. The markets are very different. I have to create a whole new market segment, audience, and start telling them, we were selling trucks and we are good at it, but now we want to sell small cars. And we also think we are good at it, but there's nothing to show as an example. So I think that the place to start that is from the business perspective, business strategy decision, even before it goes to brand, because then that affects how you treat the brand.
Yeah, maybe if I should just add something. Sorry, Winnie. Let me just add something. So the service industry examples that have come to mind is banking, where KCB started something specifically to target the young people. I think it was called Bankika or something. And it's the same thing that NCBA has done when they've introduced Loop. So they're still within the same industry. It's just they've realized that the habits of the young people is around and about the mobile, and the way NCBA or the way KCB is set up, it's not reaching out to them. So they have to create a banking product that is similar and integrates very well with M-Pesa, and that's what it does. Yeah, so it's possible. Like in such a situation, it's like a market they're not able to reach, but now they re-engineer the same product, which is banking for those young people. And even for Loop, they're saying unbank yourself. Like it's still a bank, but they're saying unbank yourself. Yeah, so that's what would be in my mind in terms of service.
I love that, Luther, you have said it's a lot to unpack. We can't unpack it in this webinar. I'm just going to use that into a segue before we go into the next section. We actually have the Friday Baraza, which is a follow-up to this webinar. So we'll have Emily, who is our back-end moderator for the day, who will share the link to the Friday Baraza in the chat. Yes, so the Friday Baraza is just like a training for entrepreneurs on different topics. So this month we are discussing branding, everything branding and building your brand and all that. We're discussing all of it at the Friday Baraza. We have it every last Friday of the month. So it's actually next week. Yes, on the 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. So we'll have it in the chat and you can register. A follow-up to this conversation. Now they'll be unpacking it with practical examples and a full-on training for about 2 hours. So yes. So just before we jump into the next section, please make sure you use the chat to ask your questions. We have a few questions that we'll pick up again as the session continues. Yes. So we've built the brand. We know the basics of building the brand. There's that one thing, and I think it's a very important question that has been asked, and we've touched on it a bit. In a market that is saturated, I want to imagine, let me think of a market that is saturated. I am trying to see. Chocolate, let's use the example of chocolate. In a market that is saturated, how do you even stand out? Like, how do you say, it is me, I am here, I'm here to shine. And I want to maybe give Chiki this one, because I think Chiki is also building something around dance, and she's really enthusiastic about, like, bringing together dance, and it's something great, but it's also a very niche market, but also a little saturated. So how do you make yourself stand out outside what everyone is doing for everyone to think? I think when I think of dance, I need to think about Chiki is a place I need to go to. Dance Sharks is where I need to go to. This is who I need to go to. When people think of dance, it is you they think about.
Yeah, that's a good question. So how we started A Fusion, how I pivoted from Cheeky Kuruka Fitness to A Fusion was when I first came to Kenya, I looked at what the market looked like. So I saw that there was a lot of Zumba. I saw a lot of people doing a lot of Latin inspired movement. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We're in the continent of music. Why is everyone doing something that's very Latin inspired where we have our own music? So it was, how do I jump on something that's already existing, already in motion, but take it from my particular angle and create a brand and a value system that was connected with that, and a framework that wouldn't move outside of that. And then more people started doing that. And then I had to pivot again. And I was like, okay, cool. So more people are doing this. This is becoming more recognizable. However, the size of the industry isn't changing so much because none of us have addressed the core problem that dancing is really, really intimidating for so many people. Second of all, dancing is something that is still very much perceived of as like a female-centric activity, which means that if you look at like the entire market, you're only ever really speaking to part of it, and then dancing is considered something overwhelmingly for a younger populace. So I said, okay, cool. What are the things that still are related to dancing? So that has to be the core foundation. We can't pivot too far from that because that's the framework that we've created. Still around Afro and Caribbean sonics, because that's a framework we're committed to, and that's where the people trust us. But how do we add elements of health? Because what you see is the market is starting to move and drive towards health-based conversations. And how do we just re-pivot our conversation slightly and say, okay, dance is for health, dance is for well-being, dance is for mental well-being. So I think the way to stand out is to constantly look at where the gaps are and how do you stay consistent and true to your fundamental principles. So for us, the fundamental principles have always been dance and using Afro-Caribbean music. And then how do we look at how the market is shifting and work in accordance with those market shifts and slightly pivot, not so far away from what our foundation is, but in line with what people seem to be asking for, so that we're adding it consistently in response to what the market is. So we've always been fortunate enough, and now with A Fusion, to really push that conversation around health. Then, as you're seeing more of these massive studios coming up, the conversation becomes, okay, cool. It's pretty market and it's niche. How do you be the best? How do you be excellent? That's our way of doing it. What's our USP? There were many other options that we could have gone for. We could have said, how do we become affordable? We could have said, how do we only use non-secular music? Because there's a group of people that like that. But it still becomes, what is the USP? How are you different from everyone else while still remaining true to your consistent bracket that you've already kind of committed? So yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love that you think about it as what is your USP as a business owner in a field that is overly saturated. So I think something that interesting that has come up even as we keep doing the discussion is that at the center of everything is the customer. At the center of everything you're doing is the customer. You need to think about the customer. And I think I want to pose this question to actually all of you, because at some point, all of you are actually business owners, but how do you make sure that your team aligns to the brand that you're building? Because they are also at the center of delivering to the said customers. How do you make sure that there's internal alignment in your team whereby they all speak the same language? Where if you pick someone to go represent you at a conference or speak about your brand, they all speak the same thing. If you line them up in a row and tell me they will all tell you the same thing, but in different, let's say, variations, but it's the same thing. How do you make sure that internal alignment exists within your organization as you build the brand?
Maybe Wendy, I can, because I'd like to also add on to what Shiki has just shared. I think from a mind shift perspective, especially if you're in a saturated industry, I think the one thing that really helped me, because I am in a very saturated industry, is really believing and knowing that there's more than enough for all of us. The question is how you differentiate, the way she said. How do you differentiate and therefore speak as a specific language to a specific audience and focus on those particular people as opposed to trying to do what everyone else is doing. So from a mind shift perspective, it just helps to know and believe and trust that there's more than enough for everyone. To your question, to my question around how do I make sure that the team is, speaking the same language, is clear on the brand. So two things: making sure that I communicate the why. Why have we chosen the path that we have chosen? Why have we chosen the audience? Why have we chosen that this is our value proposition? Why have we done that? And then the second thing is to consistently doing that. I used to have a boss that used to say, you have to hit someone with a message almost 8 times. It differs. Some people say 6 to 8 times before it really sinks, before it really sticks. So making sure that you are consistently repeating your whys and what are your value propositions, what differentiates you, why do we do the things that we do, and then repeating that consistently. That has really helped. And then of course some certain framework. So for example, how we respond on the DMs, you will think it's one person who responds, but we have a framework or almost a template in terms of how we respond to queries and all those things. So putting structure also in place that doesn't allow for deviation also really helps.
Communicate. Like all I'm hearing is, say it, even if you have to communicate 8 times, communicate.
And the
Yes.
why.
And the why. Yes, Chiki.
The why, yeah.
I'm on a constant ideological as to whether it's customer first or company first. What I mean by that is sometimes I feel like if you're very, very, very clear in what your values are, what your purpose is, what you're trying to achieve, the right people will come to you. Whereas if you're kind of like customer responsive, you do risk the risk kind of deviating from what your core purpose is, what your values are. And I think that's where consistency comes into play, and really knowing, like Naomi said earlier, why are you there? What are you trying to achieve? What is success to you? Success might just be touching many people's lives, or success might not always be a financial KPI. So I think really kind of like understanding the why of your organization in its foundation and going back to basics. What are your value? What is your personal value as the owner and the creator? I think is very, very important, because we live in such a smoke and mirrors environment where social media can give you a very, very incorrect viewpoint of where you are. There are so many people who have great engagement, millions of followers, who can't motivate human beings to actually purchase anything. Whereas you've got people with significantly less online engagement, significantly less numbers, who have really properly articulated their values, which means the correct people and only the correct people are following their line, and therefore are able to convert so much more of their online engagement into sales. So I think really making sure from the start those values are clear, and then making sure that your team is aligned with what your values are. There's a really amazing book called Leaders Eat Last, and it's all about, as a director, as a CEO, how do you put yourself second, what really aligned on what that value proposition is, and how do you make sure that all of your team are as committed to what that goal looks like, and know your team the way that you know your family. Know what makes them tick, know what is effective for them to move the needle, so that you're communicating in a way to them that makes most sense. For some it's financial goals, for some it's title goals, for some it's I don't know, recognition goals, I don't know, but really making sure that for all of your team, they're not only aligned with your values, but you know them well enough to know how to best communicate with them. So they're communicating on your behalf. Number one, they have an incentive to do it properly, but number two, they really understand above and beyond the jargon, they're committed to the why, the value behind the organization.
Okay. Anything to add on later? And Paul?
To everything that have been said, actually, the only thing I wanted to have is also you can show them. So when they see you doing it and the way you do it, then they keep learning from it. So the way to do an event is a way to handle a client when people see it, and then they're able to copy it. As much as you've told them about the values, you've shown them the why, then you also show them why we do it, and you repeat doing it, and so they also start following that as a practice. This is how we solve our problems. This is how we do it better.
Okay, I think I'm going to say it loosely. It's always monkey see, monkey do. So when your team sees you doing like how you handle it, like, oh, that's how it's done. Great, let me do it that way. So it's monkey see, monkey do. Luther?
All right. Okay, I think I'll piggyback on what Naomi said about the why. And now in my branding world, it's called the brand essence. I was born to what? That's a question that a brand needs to be able to answer. Like I was born to do, so that for when I mentioned Usain Bolt, there's something that you connect to that. So being able to summarize everything to that single statement that gives you the reason why you wake up and go to do what you do, or your team wakes up to do what they do. And then if you embody it and live it, as Paul and Chiki have put it, when you live it through, and you'll be able to now attract patriots, people who believe in what you do, as opposed to if it's just about bottom line, you end up with professional soldiers, mercenaries. And that's why some brands that don't have a soul, because it's just about the money, money, money. There's nothing bigger than life that you're living for. So it's nice to define those things and have them very clear, because then you can easily take them and then develop now a plan on how you're going to execute. But one of the other tools you can use to make your narrative consistent is something called a brand story that is normally put together by a copywriter. So they will take just your ordinary, if it's an airline company or even if it's Sense and whatever, and they're able to crystallize all that into 2 or 3 or 4 words that completely define you and separate you from the other people. And in a brand story, the customer is the hero and the brand becomes the person that guides the customer to succeed. And so good brands and good brand stories are not about the brand, it's about the people or the customer. So there are a number of tools that you can be able to do. But the thing that maybe just to wrap it up, in terms of understanding your industry, to know that brands are just about those 5 senses. So it's what you hear. And so there's some jingles or things that just cause us to have some emotions, or even music. It's what you see. So it could be colors. If I'm in a new country and I'm looking for M-Pesa, I'll be looking for green. Or if I'm in a new town, or even if I'm in my estate and I'm looking for an M-Pesa shop, I'll be looking for green. What you smell, the people whom it's the perfume, it's a smell. So what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you touch, what you taste. So the people who swear by their drinks. Yeah. So just being aware that when you're building, that's it. Yeah.
Would you say that building a brand is building an experience?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the 5 senses.
It's okay, yes. So there are a few questions in the chat, and I'll pick another one from George. He asks, how do you keep the brand fresh and current with the ever-shifting trends and perspectives? I want to give this to all of you, either of you, but I'll pick maybe Luther and Chiki. How do you keep the brand fresh with current and ever-shifting trends and perspectives?
I think we have a joke in our team that every time there's a new enough member of staff that reflects that generation. So we always have we often have boomer. Because sometimes what you realize actually and innovations come to you quite late, because you're doing a million other things. You want to be on the cusp of it. So I definitely think first and foremost about having a team that reflects the demographic of the world as is, and making sure that you have enough enough diversity of ages, enough diversity of genders, enough so that you can quickly respond to what's happening. Another thing that I think is really important is making sure that you brainstorm regularly with your team. Don't think you have all the answers. You don't actually have to have all the answers. You need to know what it is that you want to achieve. So as regularly as possible, have methods and methodologies in place where you brainstorm with your team. And I think something Naomi said earlier on is underpinning everything is mindset, mind shift. So making sure that you realize just because you're doing something in a particular way right now doesn't mean that you can't do the same thing using different technologies or using different methodologies. Just being open to what that might look like and being open to receiving that kind of feedback, actually not just from your team but from your consumers as well. If people regularly say if your product is, let's say, clothes, man, I really wish that these were delivered to my house, and kind of write that off because you're a brick and mortar store and you haven't responded to that, then someone else will come in and do that on your behalf. So also being very open to that feedback, figuring out how you can integrate that as part of your business.
Interesting. Luther?
All right. If you're big enough, you actually don't need to follow trends. actually the one who sets trends. So depending with who's speaking, because we like the fashion world or whether it's a sports world, when Nike does something, we now it becomes a trend. So everybody goes in that direction. So if you're muscle, you should be able to set the trends. You should be the one who's the one who influences where things go. If you're a small player, consumer insight is king. So your analytics, whether it's on the digital space or if you commission every so often, just have an ear to the ground to know what's happening or what's changing. And the thing I normally say is we have finite needs. Like our needs are not so many, that they're few. So if you have your ear on the ground on what's happening with that, and then you define yourself to be able to say, this is what I'm going to be meeting. So for Coca-Cola, it's beverages, and then it's whatever Coca-Cola would do, or what Fanta, you define the fun part, but connect it with beverages. If you're clear on that, then you're able to now morph and change, with the things. But yeah, it's a lot to do with consumer insights.
Can I say?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I agree with the idea that if you're big enough, you should be able to set trends, because we've seen very many very big organizations become almost irrelevant because they haven't adapted or shifted in lines with new trends. So if you look at, for example, MTV at some point was one of the biggest music streaming spaces in the world. They streamed on television, they had the MTV Awards. What they didn't see coming was a Spotify and Apple Music, and they didn't shift to the trend that was becoming digital distribution via telephone. Instead, they were the biggest, they were the players, and they had other things that they were focused on. So I definitely think still being able to see where the market is moving, where things are moving, where young people who are not even necessarily professionals in any space, young people are great because they adapt very fast. Knowing what's happening is very, very important, because you can see whether you can integrate those new things, those new trends, because not all trends come and go. Some stay for a very long period of time, and you might find that someone else has come in and done something easier or more relevant than you, and then you become irrelevant really fast.
Okay, I think that brings me to the next question, which is, when is the right time to assume that you have a brand that carries value and goodwill? Again, I can see all of you thinking, when is the right time to assume that you have a brand that carries value and goodwill? And I think we'll even post it to the participants, and we'll just ask, do you think have a brand that carries value and goodwill? So for you guys, when is the right time to assume that, what, my brand has a value and it has goodwill? Naomi?
Wow. Carries value and goodwill. I think for me, maybe from a personal experience, a lot of what has been happening in the past year is invitations to do conversations such as this, and it takes different forms and shapes for different people, but just opportunities to either showcase or whatever the case. Even Emily will tell you, what they're not like, what, me, how, So just being confident that you're doing something worthwhile and valuable. So in terms of the shape, the size, the scope varies really from person to person. But if you're able to make impact, give back to, walk people through, so to speak, then for me as a personal brand, being able to walk people through social media or whatever the case, in terms of what to think about, for me, it represents being able to carry my brand, carrying value and goodwill. But I think that would really, really vary from individual to individual, my thoughts.
Okay, go ahead, Chiki.
What I would question is, what is the value of coming to a conclusion that your brand has value and goodwill?
Yeah.
I think I would start by asking that. And the funny thing about goodwill especially in a market like Kenya, unfortunately, goodwill can go within a blink of an eye. I'll give you an example. There are many, many clubs that have opened who are the hottest ticket in town. You could say that they have value. You can say that they have goodwill in virtue of the fact that they're packed every single Friday, they're packed every single Saturday. When you go on social media, everyone is saying, make sure you go there, make sure you go there, make sure you go there. And then something might happen in that space, and overnight, all of the goodwill that has been built up over a period of time no longer exists. So I think I guess my natural reaction to it, and I think maybe the reason why it took guys long to kind of answer it is what's the value of that, is I think we should never-ending quest to build value and goodwill, and be very receptive to the fact that sometimes our value proposition with our consumers have changed, and be able to pivot fast, to be able to perceive that, okay, our goodwill is we're losing it a bit, we can see less customers, okay, fine, pivot to that, and that should be a goal that we never strive to lose. I think that's kind of how I would answer it.
So do you want to go next?
Yeah, okay. So I would, in a very simple way, I would say, you earn value when people don't negotiate you down. So whatever you set as a value or in exchange for the thing you're giving to them, when they are more accepting to it, you're heading somewhere. For goodwill, when you continuously get referrals, endorsements, and people want to be associated with you, you're enjoying goodwill.
When people constantly want to be associated with you, you're getting goodwill. So that speaks a lot about the reputation you've built as well as time goes by, right?
Yeah, I was gonna add, I like what Tiki has said, because that goodwill is on, you have to work on it on a daily basis. It doesn't just sit there and you have it and I'm like, cheers, everyone is coming to me. Things can change in a day and nobody is coming to you. And those things can not be of your making. The economy change, the road could move, so there's so many things that could happen. So I feel like that goodwill is built on day by day. Like it's consistently building that goodwill, making sure you have goodwill. And you see it from, as Naomi has said, when people mention you into rooms, when people are buying from you, when people want to engage you, you can gauge it from that perspective, but you can never say that my pot is full. You have to work on it every day. I really like that example of the clubs. Usually in 6 months, if a club has lasted 2 years, our Mejaribu in Nairobi. So it's, when you look at it and you say, yeah, those guys, 2 years down the line, because 6 months, 6 to 9 months, and also sometimes with restaurants, you see a restaurant and in 6 months' time, they're not there anymore. And you're like, what is it that made them die? Did they move to a different location? What was the thing? And sometimes it's just that thinking that the goodwill will stay, but you have to work on it on a daily basis.
Okay. I want to take us back to the social media discussion, because it seems like that's a very big pain point for a lot of business owners, especially in terms of pivoting into social media. And there was a question from Priska. How do you make someone buy your product on social media? Is it possible?
I can take that. I was actually typing a response. Yes, it's very possible, Christian. Thank you for your question. So we've already hit on, you've understood your audience. So we'll assume you're on the right channels. So the next thing for me would be, how well are you showcasing or communicating the occasions of use? Let me unpack that a bit. You're selling, what can I say? Let me use something. So body scrubs. Maybe not many people use body scrubs. So the question is, Are you taking the time to, do you understand, first of all, that not many people use body scrubs and therefore perhaps choose to use message that is educational to then cause people to think, okay, actually, maybe I should be using a scrub. And by showcasing at what point are you using the scrub. So occasionally, so how I look at it is from a marketing perspective is you want to plant a flag in someone's mind of when they should be using your product, so that then when that happens, they'll realize, oh, but I saw X, Y, and Z, maybe I should be using this. And that becomes enough of a conviction for them to buy from you. I hope I'm not using too much jargons, but just how well on social media are you planting seeds in someone's mind that when you are in this situation, you should be doing this, or you should be using this, or you should be this. That sort of helps in terms of convicting someone when they find themselves in that situation, then to be convicted to buy your product. So occasions of use. The second part of my response would be, again, these are some of these things that can be a webinar on its own. The second thing is, because social media, there's a lot of issues around trust. How much are you doing to make sure that you're building trust with your client? Please showcase any customer reviews, showcase actual people having bought, and, find a way of building your reputation from an online perspective. And then another thing that a lot of people sometimes fail to do and can build on the trust is, are you constantly responsive on your DMs? Because it beats the purpose if I ask you a question on your DM or make a comment and it takes you 2 days to respond and all that. So it's also part of the building trust, where I know if I come to you, I should be able to get it and I should be able to buy a product. I hope that helps.
Can I also say, because I purchase almost everything on social media, very rarely now do I go to a brick and mortar establishment, and just thinking of myself as a consumer, I think not underestimating the value of organic growth or how much harm a bad experience can do. So for example, when I purchase a lot of clothes online, if I buy something, the rider has taken long to come, they haven't come at the time that they said they were going to come, the product isn't exactly how I liked it, my ability to get a refund or an exchange is a complicated one, I won't even necessarily tell you, I just won't go back to your store.
Correct.
Where I have a seamless experience and all of those things are right, not only am I very likely to go back to your store, I'm also very likely to share that story with someone else. So I think I kind of like question, what is your incentive to your customers who've had great experiences to make sure that they also become your ambassadors, to encourage that kind of like organic and natural growth? But I think a lot of these online businesses fail simply because someone has had a bad experience. People won't necessarily message their bad experience, so just disengage. And you as a provider might be wondering, oh, how comes this was working and this isn't working? And it's no client's responsibility to tell you that this was a terrible experience. So how are you also making sure that every part, because trust for online is everything, every part of the system works. Mess ups are so much more costly on digital shops than they are on physical shops, because you haven't built the rapport with the person.
Sorry. I was going to mention something our digital expert was telling us yesterday during a training, is even on TikTok, you need to also reply to those likes. So if somebody sends a like, also either send a like or fire emoji, because that's how the session is held on TikTok. You don't have to actually write a full sentence, but actually respond. And that then shows the other person that you've seen, that they've liked the content you've put, and that you have responded. And the thing with TikTok is actually when you respond, it's shown to more people. So some of us just see people have liked and we're like, oh, cool, cheers, and we move on. But when you respond, then your content gets shown to even more people.
Okay. I think because we're just about to wrap up. We said 90 minutes strictly. There's a question here from Voyesa again, and he asks, what are the 5 things SMEs or startups should be doing to ensure that they are positively investing in their brand? And there's a response from Luta, who was very quick on the keyboard in the chat. And he's just said, do they know that is familiarity? What are they doing to be consistent in their delivery, which is trust? Why should they choose you over others, which is favor? And is what you offer seen as value, which is reputation, which we covered at the beginning of the webinar, I think. But I think it's very key that you think about it as familiarity, trust, favor, and reputation. Those 4 things really cover the basis of what you need to do, like what is investing in your brand and what does it give you at the end of the day. And lastly, we had a question from, she's called Wendy. I'm a creative. I'm from the creative industry, owning an art and pottery gallery, and I would like to know how would I keep my brand on the move and target the audience that I need, especially in the social media. So I think I want to give this to Chiki and Naomi.
You repeat the question.
She owns an art and pottery gallery and would like to know how to keep the brand on the move and target the audience she needs, especially on social media.
You said Naomi as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can kick off.
Yeah.
Top of my mind, I was actually quickly scrolling to see, because I can't see the question here. Oh, I have seen it on the Q&A side. Art and pottery gallery. Target the audience that I need, especially on social media. So the practical thing that I would do is, especially if you have a physical location or you have clients that you can engage with, perfect timing for this one. Allow me to finish. Apologies for that. So please let me finish. Sorry, guys. So the practical example is engage with 3 or 4 of your clients, your top clients, the people who embody your perfect audience, your perfect target audience, assuming this is not a new business. And if they're friendly enough, I hope they're friendly enough, just sit down and talk to them and ask them, one, which social media platforms are they on? What kind of content do they enjoy? All those things. Like really talk to a real client, a client that actually really looks like the people you're trying to target, and get the insights, draw the insights from them as far as their social media consumption is concerned. It does not necessarily have to be specific to art and poetry. It can, if they do consume that kind of content, and if they don't, it's a good opportunity to ask them. But I think that becomes then, a place where you can get a lot of answers for your questions, because it's really about really understanding your audience as far as art and poetry is concerned, and understanding their consumer habits in the social media. And then you see how to replicate, or you see how to build up from those particular responses. That's what I'll say. Thanks.
I think I would also add to that, build an online personality that's a distinct personality. Like I love, there's an American food chain brand called Wendy's, and Wendy's engage in spaces where you would never expect an American food chain brand to engage in. So for example, there was the space flight that happened yesterday, and Katy Perry went up to space and she kissed the ground when she came down, and then Wendy's, who's known to be a bit trolly, message, can we send her back to space? And now we know Wendy in spaces that you would never expect Wendy to be in. So they're always top of mind. So if I were to ever go to America, I would definitely to Wendy's. So I think having some form of on social media personality that's distinctly yours is very, very important. And then that allows you to engage in spaces that are like yours but similar to yours, because you've got to figure that if you're key consumer online is probably not just following your gallery. They're probably following multiple other galleries as well. They're probably following multiple other similar spaces as well. So how do you, in those spaces, also bring what your digital personality is to those spaces so that you're known across the community, very personally and intimately for your digital personality, and that then brings people back to your space. The second thing I would say is, in line with what Naomi said, is there is more than enough room for everyone. Build communities around the pottery space or whatever, be them digital communities or be them offline communities, because the same, again, the consumers are going to be following many. There's no person who just follows, if it's scents, are just going to follow Naomi's scents. They're probably following every single sense. If dance, they're not just following mine. And just because they're following multiple spaces doesn't mean that, sorry, Id, take her outside. So, if we could do a webinar on how to train your dog, I would definitely join that one. We've tried for the last
And children.
I think making sure that you're also in those digital and physical communities, and I think there has to be also a very good link between what's happening digitally and what's happening physically, because I think, again, there's so much smoke and mirrors that can happen with online, and the whole goal that I'm guessing that you're trying to achieve is, how do we make more people either turn up to my space or buy my product? So what's the thought process between online to physical? How do we incentivize your online people to either be your physical consumers or your people who are going to buy your sculptures? And that then goes back to the other example of, how do we give client reviews, product reviews, all of those kinds of things, so that there's a consistent reminder that actually there is a product at the end for you to buy from this, and these are all my other customers who love the product that I have to sell.
Wendy, allow me to also tell Wendy as well, to add on to Chiki's point, is because of the fact that if you're an enthusiast, you're likely to be following multiple pages. Then we go back again. What is your value proposition? What is your differentiator? What are you striving very hard to be, to differentiate yourself in terms of clutter from everyone else? In terms of, there must be a reason why you started your own gallery. What is this thing that you're so passionate about that you think is, it's very different from other people? And how well and consistently are you articulating that particular differentiator with the other?
Okay, I love that. And I think I mentioned earlier on the call, this conversation is not over. Again, this is just the beginning. This is just the top layer stuff. So I think next week we'll be having the Friday Baraza, which will be happening here at the Sandbox from 6 to 8 p.m. And Emily will share the link once again in the chat so that you can register. We'll also send all the participants every attendee who attended today. We'll just send you communication on the Friday Baraza and how you can join us for this conversation, because I think it is a very important conversation, because without the brands, we need all of you to build something, and we need to build something phenomenal, like what people like Naomi are building with Treasured Sense, and what Chiki is building with Fusion, and what Luta and Paul are doing with the various brands that they work with them as they build their own. But this is just the beginning. So the link to the form to sign up is on the chat. We'll also add in an email address that if you have questions, you can reach out to us so that you're able to ask anything you'd like to exhibit. Please let us know. You'd like to attend, please let us know. If you have questions, please ask, and we can't wait to see all of you next week on Friday. So as a parting shot, because I want us to wrap up with just 4 minutes over time. So there's a last question, then we'll allow the panelists to give us a parting shot. Alice is asking, I'm in the insurance industry and people say insurance is sold, not bought. How can you brand how can you brand in offering insurance services? I want to give this to Luta and because they're the professionals.
I was actually gonna give an answer because I have bought insurance from Alice before.
Yes.
So the moment Alice sits down with you and explains the insurance, you buy it. because I feel like insurance is in the destination and not the product. It's what the product does for me, where it helps me, at what, especially insurance that I'm not required to buy. I'm required to buy motor insurance, and that I don't have a choice. But all these other, I have to figure out where does it fit. Where does domestic insurance come? Where does WIBA come? And the moment Ali sits with you and explains, it's very important. I want it. I feel like the opportunity to have a very good, not selling conversation with an insurance agent is actually where you buy insurance. Now, unfortunately, most of them come to us to sell. So my gut is always up. I'm like, I'm buying nothing. Until now we have that conversation. Then I'm like, oh, maybe there's actually something here I can consider. Luther?
I agree with everything you have said.
Just as a quick short, a round of short, like as we build brands and as we work with various businesses to build brands, what would you tell the SME who is really in the thick of, I don't know what I'm doing when I'm building this brand? I'll start. I think I'll start because I feel like I've been in class now. I know. I think for me, it's consistency, communicate, and know your why. Consistency, communicate, and know your why. Why are you like? That's it for me. Like that's for me. That's what I have taken away from this. Yes. I'll start
My
with-
part, I can give you my part in short. There's value everywhere. Don't be overwhelmed. Don't perceive that what you have to offer hasn't got value. There is everywhere. It's about making sure that you best communicate that value to the correct consumer.
Audience, correct. Yeah. Mine would be, especially because as an SME, spending on marketing can really be put in the back burner. The thing is, you must spend, even if it's 1% of your revenue, you must spend. But it stops being about how much you spend, but more about how clearly you understand your audience, and then how creatively you can show up where they already are. And creatively showing up where they already are might be in the traditional, or like in the example Chiki gave us, in non-traditional spaces. Just know where they are and show up where they are. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
Paul?
I think there's expertise here to actually help you. We tell stories all the time. We help raise awareness. So come, let's engage and see how we can start and continue, because we want you to start but continue so that you get the consistency, but also you get.
Luther?
I would say keep investing in what you do, be good at it, and then from it now you can easily tell the world something that is truthful about what you do. So beyond that, other things will fall in place in terms of reputation and value, because you've already worked on what you're good at.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Again, I'll mention for the last time before we end the call, please make sure you sign up for the Friday Baraza. We'll be very excited to continue this conversation with more people, and now a physical touch to it in terms of being physically present in the room and to ask all these questions and learn from the best. Again, this is just a fraction of the best that we know and we have. So to learn from the best as we keep going. So I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us. You've given us your 1 hour and 90 minutes and 9 minutes. I've gone overboard by 9 minutes, but thank you so much. And to all our attendees, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at the Friday Baraza. From us here at Sandbox, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.